Exposed: How I Kept My $50 Million Lottery Win Secret While Struggling and One Amazing Act Changed Everything. Keith Anderson steered his old truck along the familiar winding roads of Maplewood, Ohio, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows. The old engine rattled in protest, matching the storm brewing inside him. How could he face the world, knowing he possessed an unimaginable fortune yet felt like a fraud? $50 million hidden in a vault, while he wore blue jeans and a work shirt like every other day. The thought gnawed at him, clawing through the very fiber of his being. For weeks, he wrestled with that secret like a heavyweight boxer, every jab another reminder of his old man's voice in his head: honesty, loyalty, hard work. A factory worker who preached humility until his last breath. Keith had devoted his life to that creed, finding pride in hauling freight across the country. Now, the temptation to indulge in luxuries danced around him like a siren song, but he held fast to his roots, a reluctant shepherd of his family's values. As the truck rattled past the familiar fields where laughter echoed and children played, he couldn't shake the impending guilt. Did his friends notice the subtle change in his demeanor? The way he faked laughter at brunch, all while the weight of his secret pressed down like a heavy shroud? He could almost hear their thoughts whispering behind closed doors. What happened to good old Keith? He asked different now. The fear wrapped him tighter, a blend of anxiety and dread playing in an agonizing symphony in his mind. It was during one of those restless nights sitting in his cluttered garage beneath the flickering light bulb that Keith discovered something new. He picked up a paintbrush, hoping to drown out the chaos, and found solace in the strokes of color against the canvas. Each stroke mirrored the struggle of his life, the heartache, the resilience transforming his hidden anxieties into vibrant art. What if he could share this? But then the voice surged again. What would they think? You an artist? Surely it'll expose the truth. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Keith's pulse quickened when he learned that a gallery owner admired his work at the local fair. Excitement surged within him, a double-edged sword. Should he embrace this unexpected recognition, risk uncovering his truth, or swiftly retreat back to obscurity? The thought of losing everything he worked for, everything his father instilled in him, sent shudders of uncertainty through his veins. Yet, as if a cruel twist of fate were in play, tragedy struck. Linda, his beloved sister, found herself battling a legal injustice that spiraled her into debt with medical bills. Desperation coursed through Keith's veins. Here he had a fortune, but would using it mean disrespecting his father's legacy? People relied on him, yet he had a means to provide real help. Each day he watched Linda struggle against the tide. A pit of anguish formed in his stomach. Keith felt the crushing conflict suffocating him. With every family dinner, every shared glance from friends that spoke of unwavering faith in him, he sensed the cracks forming in his facade. A man they believed would offer them hope even as he held despair. The weight of his family's expectations bore down. What kind of man was he really? The truck driver they knew, or the hidden artist with a treasure chest of secrets? The answer seemed to swim just out of reach as he held that paintbrush, the struggle for clarity tightening around him. Could he wield the great fortune for good without tainting the man he was? The stirring conflict ignited a fire, leaving him dangling on the precipice of his own reality, with a decision looming that could change everything. Keith's hands trembled as he sat in front of the half-finished canvas, a chaotic blend of colors swirling before him. Each stroke told a story of fear and longing, but instead of art, it had become a battleground for his thoughts. The tension was palpable, a reflection of the internal war he was fighting. Embracing artistry felt like shackling himself to a new identity neither fully formed nor understood. Was he truly an artist, or merely a fraud masquerading with a paintbrush? He pressed the brush against the canvas, the bristles scratching against the surface as he considered the gallery owner's words. Recognition. Could he allow it to flourish without sacrificing everything he knew? He had envisioned a safe haven for his soul, a space where his troubles faded under vibrant coats of paint. But what if unveiling this part of himself meant unveiling his hidden wealth? What if the world no longer viewed him as the humble truck driver, but rather as a man who had forsaken his origins for ambiguous dreams? The thoughts of Linda gnawed at him like a relentless tide. The weight of her struggles processed in myriad calculations in his mind. Her joys would be snuffed out without intervention, and he had the means to eradicate that darkness. Yet, using that fortune felt like betraying the very principles his father held sacred, principles he had carried like banners every day. Every time he attempted to justify spending, the hypocrite's voice echoed louder. Courage versus cowardice played on repeat, and each time the frustration grew deeper. With the sun setting, casting hues of orange and mauve over Maplewood, Keith felt a shift. The light warmed the space, but his heart still remained shadowed. He pushed the pain aside and drove to Linda's house, uncertainty at the forefront of his mind. The familiar route clung to memory, but was it the same for him? No longer was he just Keith from Maplewood. Now he was so much more and so much less. Linda, he called as he stepped inside, the familiar sense flooding him with nostalgia. There she was, nestled on the couch, papers sprawled around her, eyes low and tired. "Hey, Keith," she replied, her voice a mere whisper amidst the chaos. As she looked up, concern etched her face. "You okay? You seem different." He hesitated, weighing his words carefully. I'm figuring some things out." She shifted uneasily. "You've been quiet. It's not like you. Family's been trying to reach out, you know." It hit him hard. Not just family, they depended on him. A wave of guilt washed over Keith. What if he had the ability to fix things for them, but remained stagnant in his own self-imposed chains? "Linda, I want to help you. We can figure this out." In her eyes, he saw a flicker of hope quelling the burden pressing on his chest. Yet, the question clung to him like a fog. How could he offer support while not betraying the essence of who he was? The idea of using his wealth was a storm cloud overhead, dark and foreboding. "I've been painting," he blurted out suddenly, much to his own surprise. The words cascaded from his lips, laden with trepidation. "There's this gallery interested in my work." Her mouth fell open slightly, bewildered. "You? Painting? That's incredible." "Yes, but it's complicated. I don't want people to think I'm selling out, you know? Not when I have this secret hanging over my head." "Keith," she said slowly, her eyes piercing through him. "You have to step into your power. Whatever it is tucked away, maybe that's the key both for you and for us." His heart raced. A door had opened, yet the weight of crossing that threshold paralyzed him. Facing the world as an artist felt fresh and terrifying. Yet, Linda's encouragement softened the grip of fear. Maybe it was time for him to claim more than just a facade. He left her that night with a renewed sense of purpose, but also with the heavy question hovering over his conscience: was he ready to confront the demons lurking around both his artistry and his fortune? With resolve warring with fear, Keith settled back in his truck, the engine humming softly as the path ahead glimmered in the moonlight. The decision before him loomed monumental: harness his gift openly or retreat back into the shadows. But first, he had to confront the truth with himself. Could he dare step into the light, or would he forever remain trapped in the twilight between who he was and who he could become? The morning light crept into Keith's small apartment, illuminating the half-finished canvas propped against the wall, a reminder of both his potential and his apprehensions. He woke with a jolt, the weight of his thoughts still clinging to him like a heavy fog. The clarity of night had been replaced by the frantic grip of day, each moment stretched thin with possibility. What if today was the day? As he brewed his coffee, he replayed the conversation with Linda in his mind. Her voice echoed, "Step into your power." The reality of what she had said held more gravity than he initially recognized. He wasn't just battling his fears about being an artist. He was wrestling with the identity of the person he truly wanted to be. He glanced at the clock. Time was ticking away, and the gallery owner awaited his decision. Maybe it was time to take that leap. The thought sent tremors through him, exhilaration intertwined with dread. Could he commit to this new direction without losing sight of his past? After finishing his coffee, Keith returned to the canvas, the paint tubes gleaming under the light, beckoning him to create. Yet, as he picked up the brush again, uncertainty clawed at him. A simple stroke felt like a declaration. Would he portray a version of himself that the world could embrace, or merely a fantasy? He began, layering colors and rhythmic motions: blue for disappointment, red for passion, orange for hope. The chaotic amalgamation mirrored his inner dialogue. As colors merged, so did his conflicting emotions. There was a freedom in the strokes that spoke to him beyond mere artistic expression. It was the first steps toward unveiling himself, both as an artist and as a man evolving beyond the weight of his wealth. Hours passed as he painted, a meditative state overtaking him. Each wash of color was an exploration of self. But the search for authenticity didn't stop at the canvas. With his heart racing, he pulled out his phone and dialed Linda's number. "Hey, it's me," he said when she picked up, a tremor in his voice. "I've thought a lot about what you said. I want to help, really help. Not just with money, but also finding a way to face the family. I don't know if I can make it right, but I want to try." "Keith, that sounds great. Just the fact you're even considering it means a lot. But how do we even start?" Her enthusiasm buoyed him, yet the enormity of the decision weighed heavily. "I don't want to hide anymore," he admitted, the words spilling out before he could contemplate the gravity of his revelation. "I want to take the chance both with my art and my family." Her silence gave way to a burst of joy. "This is a big step. I knew you were on the brink of something. You're not just a truck driver or a secret millionaire. You're an artist with a story to tell." Every word she spoke resonated as he contemplated the duality of his life, his wealth against his humble beginnings. This was the moment he needed to confront head-on. "I have a commitment to my community too. I just have to figure out how to merge that with what I truly desire," he replied, heart firing with ambition. "I can't just leap. I need to plan, draft, strategize. Then let us brainstorm together. Art can inspire. Maybe we start there?" she suggested, each word igniting his resolve. The thought of integrating his newfound passion with a purpose bigger than himself was intoxicating. He nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "Yes, I think I'll work on this piece for the gallery as part of that. It will express not only who I am, but who I want to be for everyone. I can't wait to see it. Just promise me you'll take the time and realize it's about your journey, not just a show." Her encouragement felt like a lifeline. An artist needed authenticity, after all, and a life could be enriched by both his fortune and his roots. As Keith hung up, the swirl of colors on the canvas came alive in his mind. Today was not just a brush against the canvas, it was the beginning of a larger transformation. But with every brush stroke, he knew another truth lingered. Was he ready to face those closest to him, unveiling not just the artist, but the man beyond wealth? His thoughts circled like moths to a flame as he set to work anew, but what awaited him beyond the ease of creativity was an unsettling reality he could no longer ignore. Could the final creation actually bridge the gap between the life he had assumed and the life he aspired to live? Keith stared at the canvas, the colors swirling before him like whispers of what could be. Every stroke had a story. Every hue played a role in the narrative that was both personal and collective. He pushed the brush across the canvas, feeling invigorated but also aware of the weight of expectation pressing down. He was no longer merely a secret benefactor. He was an artist with a voice and a purpose, neither of which could be muted by his past. With each layer he added, however, doubt began to seep in. The vivid reds and blues seemed to taunt him, reflecting the tumult within. Did he possess the ability to truly express not just what he felt, but also what others felt? He glanced over at the wall clock again, its relentless ticking echoing a growing urgency in his chest. Time was ephemeral, and today would not stretch out to accommodate his self-doubt. "Just breathe," he whispered to himself, steadying his hand. He pushed harder through the internal chaos, but with each stroke, he felt an impending confrontation hovering just beyond the walls of his studio. His family, the ones he had left behind while he transformed into someone new, loomed in his thoughts. To be authentic meant exposure, and exposure meant a reckoning he was still afraid to face. As he stepped back to admire his work, an idea began to crystallize in his mind. This piece could serve as more than just artistic expression. It could be an anchor when he reconnected with his family. He envisioned a gallery showing not only displaying his art, but also unveiling the truth about his journey and contact with community. But how to frame that narrative? Would he start with the wealth, allowing them to dissect it and place value upon him, or would he begin with the passion, the struggle, the essence of who he was emerging as an artist? He sat on the edge of his stool, dragging his gaze down and burrowing into the texture of the canvas. Each bump and groove seemed to reflect a choice he would need to make: hide behind the anonymity of his wealth or reveal the human underneath, the person who felt painfully ordinary. The phone buzzed, startling him from his thoughts. It was a message from Linda. "What is the theme of your piece?" "It has to resonate with authenticity." His heart sank slightly as he read her words. Authenticity, that cornerstone of both his art and his life. He tapped his fingers on the side of the work table, contemplating how to respond. He didn't know the theme yet, only the fear it would all come crumbling down if he couldn't articulate his vision coherently. Sinking back into reflection, Keith thought about those moments when he had felt most exposed, not just as an artist, but as a person. Vulnerability had always taken on a negative connotation in his mind, tangled up with the idea of failure, a perception that only wealth could mask. But perhaps this time, vulnerability could be the key to unlocking deeper connections, both with his art and with others. Taking a deep breath, he set the brush down and began drafting words on his notebook. With Linda's encouragement, he wanted to create a backstory that would pull people in and resonate with their own struggles. He wasn't just depicting chaos on the canvas. He was chronicling a transformation, a journey toward embracing the cracks and flaws within. Hours slipped away as he fleshed out his concepts, but as dusk settled in, a more daunting question loomed in the shadows of his thoughts. How would his revelation be received by his family? He envisioned their surprised faces, mouths agape at the news that their brother, son once just Keith from the neighborhood, had hit the lottery and remained hidden from them. A mix of admiration, resentment, and disbelief flickered across his mind, more questions surfacing with each insight. Would they dismiss his aspirations as trivial? Would they be proud, or would they see his wealth as a final nail in their perceived normalcy? Could his creation take root and flourish in their eyes, or would it crumble under scrutiny? Keith shut his notebook, a knot forming deep in his stomach. He wasn't just crafting a piece of art. He was about to engage in a profound act of exposure. This was not merely a gallery opening. It would be the radical unveiling of his entirety. The road ahead was brimming with potential twists, but he clung to a single truth: all profound transformations demand some level of risk. For an artist, every brushstroke is a step into the unknown, and now he was stepping into the most significant painting of his life, the unveiling of himself to those he had long avoided. With resolved determination, he picked up the brush once more. His journey would not remain confined to the canvas. It beckoned for a new beginning, one that started with truth. With the first stroke, he thought, the time had come to face my past and embrace the artist I truly am, firming up his intent. But even as he celebrated this newfound conviction, the thought echoed back to him: would his family be able to meet him on this artistic plane, or would they remain stuck in yesterday, unable to see the man he had become? His heart raced as he pondered that impossible intersection. With one decisive brushstroke, he would be ready, regardless of what lay ahead. The canvas loomed large before Keith, a physical manifestation of his internal struggle. As the paint dried, he felt the weight of anticipation pressing against his chest. This piece, this vibrant explosion of color and chaos, was not just art. It was a part of him begging for recognition. He understood now that the brush strokes carried more than mere pigment. They were laden with his truths, fears, and yearnings. Yet, despite his fervent desire to express himself, anxiety gripped him tighter. The looming tension in the pit of his stomach became a bitter reminder of the conversations he had been avoiding. Would unveiling his art also mean unveiling his deepest insecurities? Each time he added a stroke, the question echoed louder. How could he capture the nuanced emotions of human experience without risking rejection from the very people whom he feared most, lost in contemplation? Keith put down the paintbrush and reached for his notebook. He knew he needed to refine his narrative, to define the theme that would encapsulate his art. Was he merely an artist using color as a shield against vulnerability, or was he ready to confront the demons that haunted him? His thoughts drifted back to his family. The familiar faces of people he longed to reconnect with yet feared would never accept the transformation he had undergone. Would his newfound identity as an artist overshadow the intimate memories of their shared past? Or could he weave his story eloquently enough to bridge that chasm? The stakes felt monumental, and with each passing moment, he risked losing part of himself through silence. While trying to gather his scattered thoughts, he recalled the last conversation he had with his sister, Jenna. Her face, twisted in confusion when he had casually mentioned that he'd been doing well, haunted him. She had no idea of the magnitude of the change, nor of the multitude of emotions he had bottled up for years. The fear of their judgment clawed at him, but as he doodled unsolicited lines around fragments of thoughts, a flicker of determination ignited within. Taking a deep breath, Keith began to write. He realized that the underlying theme of authenticity he sought to convey wasn't solely about his wealth. It was the journey of transformation itself, the wrestling with vulnerability, the struggle to demonstrate both success and struggle in a format others could grasp. Each word became a brushstroke, painting a vivid backdrop to the life he lived beneath the surface. What if I explored the price of success? He mused, scribbling feverishly. The silence, the strategies, the deception that came with hiding my heart from those I loved. Suddenly, those feelings of betrayal and alienation didn't seem so isolating. Instead, they were a powerful narrative tool offering a canvas ripe for exploration. As the night wore on, he poured every ounce of fear, hope, and determination into his writing. His narrative became a battleground of reflections, fighting against societal expectations and family loyalty. With every sentence, he felt bolder and more liberated. This was not just an exploration of art, it was about embracing his reality, regardless of public reception. But just as he began to sense an emerging clarity, another wave of self-doubt washed over him. Would the truths he exposed sever the bonds with his family? He pictured his parents' faces, the shock of discovery coloring their expressions. What if they could not reconcile the person he had become with the son they thought they had raised? Keith stood abruptly, glancing unsteadily at the chaotic palette of colors smeared across the canvas. The art started to blur together, mirroring his internal confusion. Could he trust his family with the truth? Would sharing his journey cultivate understanding and connection, or would it shatter what remained of their bond? As he walked to the window, staring out into the moonlit night, a path forward crystallized. He needed to have the conversation, to reveal his journey and simultaneously unveil this kaleidoscope of emotions through the art that represented his truth. It was pivotal, both artistically and personally. Yet, even as his resolve strengthened, he couldn't shake the uncertainty. He wondered if he would falter at the moment of confession. Would he find the right words to convey the complexity of his soul, or would it become another tangled miscommunication lost in translation? As the first rays of dawn crept into the studio, illuminating the vibrant colors of his canvas, he could feel the weight stirring within him, the urgency to create something meaningful with his life. He thought, this was not just about them. It was about me learning to articulate who I had become. With an invigorated spirit, Keith prepared for a battle between truth and vulnerability. Each brushstroke on the canvas would echo his intent to redefine what was possible for him and expose what had long been hidden. As he took up his brush once more, a new concept unfurled in his mind. What if my art could serve as a vessel, a safe space to navigate this conversation? What lay ahead felt like the precipice of revelation. Uncertainty floated like mist, but a sense of deeper understanding beckoned him forward. And with that thought, Keith set his intentions. Tomorrow marked the day he would face his family not just as an artist, but as a man ready to reclaim his story. Would he emerge triumphant, or would he leave with the echoes of his heart unspoken? Keith awoke with the sun filtering through his studio window, illuminating the chaotic splashes of color that had become both an extension of his emotions and a mirror of his turmoil. The day ahead loomed like a blank canvas, filled with promise and trepidation. His heart raced as he mentally rehearsed the words he would share, words that had remained unspoken for far too long. Standing before the canvas, he traced a finger over the dried paint, recalling how each stroke encapsulated a moment, a feeling, a realization. Could those colors convey the complexities of his journey? Could they unlock the door to understanding between him and his family? He needed to believe that artistic expression could act as a bridge, linking his inner world to theirs. But the fear of their rejection was a palpable weight on his chest. As he prepared for the day ahead, Keith felt a swirl of readiness intertwined with anxiety. This conversation, he realized, wasn't merely about unveiling his art, it was about unveiling himself. He took a moment to breathe, grounding himself in the knowledge that honesty was the first step toward healing. After a quick breakfast that he barely tasted, he sat down at a small table, scribbling down the essential points he wanted to convey. He sought clarity, crafting a narrative that would explain not only his financial success, but also the emotional toll it had taken on him. Every word felt like a brushstroke on his own story, revealing the shadows and light of his experiences. He focused on the concept of success being more than just wealth. Every achievement brought with it a wave of isolation, a sense of disconnect from the life he once knew. He recalled the smiles of family gatherings, conversations filled with laughter, and how those connections faded with each step up the ladder of success. It wasn't just about the victories, it was about what he had lost along the way. When it was finally time to leave, a cloud of trepidation hung heavily around him. The drive to his parents' house felt like an eternity, each passing block amplifying the battle within. Would his family understand? Or was he exposing himself to a failure that would bury him further in silence? As he parked outside their familiar home, he noticed the garden his mother had meticulously tended to. It seemed vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling inside him. These were the roots of his existence: love, family, and shared memories, but would they embrace the man he had become, or cling to the boy they thought they knew? Keith stepped out of the car, each heartbeat echoing the internal struggle. He took a deep breath, embracing the cool air that soothed his nerves, but did little to quell the raging uncertainty. As he made his way to the front door, his hand trembled slightly before he knocked. The sound reverberated through him, an invitation to vulnerability. When the door opened and his mother's smile greeted him, everything paused. She looked just as he remembered, warm, welcoming, but unaware of the storm that brewed beneath his surface. "Keith!" she exclaimed, pulling him into an embrace that felt both reassuring and overwhelming. He could feel her heartbeat against his chest, a soothing rhythm that ignited both nostalgia and apprehension. "Hi, Mom," he managed, feeling the weight of what he was about to share crash down again. Noticing the change in his demeanor, her smile faded slightly. "Are you okay? You seem different." In an instant, Keith realized this moment was pivotal. He had to embrace the feeling of being unsteady, of revealing himself entirely. This was not just an introduction to his art, it was an invitation for them to understand his entire journey. "Can we talk?" he asked softly, the tremor in his voice betraying the calm facade he tried to maintain. As they took a seat at the kitchen table, he knew his fate rested on how well he could navigate this pivotal conversation. Would they see him for who he really was? The weight of his secrets pressed heavily on him as he took a deep breath and prepared to share not just his art, but the truths that lay within it. The moment had arrived, and within that moment, a realization began to solidify. Art could serve as the vessel for this dialogue, bridging the gap between who he was and who they believed him to be. Keith looked into his mother's eyes, questioning if the warmth they once shared could withstand the revelation. Could this opening, paired with the hues of his artwork, cultivate the understanding he sought? And as he opened his mouth to speak, a single thought echoed in the recesses of his mind. The journey to unveiling truth had just begun, but would it ultimately lead to freedom or deeper entanglement? The kitchen felt both intimate and foreign as Keith sat across from his mother, the bright morning light casting a warm glow that did little to ease the cold knot of anxiety in his stomach. His thoughts raced, pulling him between the desire to unburden himself and the instinct to shield her from his truth. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you," Keith started, his voice shaky yet resolute. The moment felt like a tightrope walk over an abyss, where one misstep could plunge him into a chasm of misunderstanding. His mother leaned in, her expression shifting to one of concern. "What is it, sweetheart? You're worrying me." He took a steadying breath, summoning the courage that had felt elusive just moments before. I've done well in my career, but it's not what you think." Pausing, the silence hung thick with expectancy. He could feel her gaze intensifying. She wanted answers, and he owed her honesty. "I won a significant amount of money, lots of it. $50 million from the lottery." The confession tumbled into the space between them, the words both liberating and binding. He watched as her eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and confusion contorting her features, and in that instant, he braced himself for the emotional backlash. $50 million? Keith, why didn't you tell us?" Her voice held a tremor, a painful blend of shock and a hint of betrayal. "I was afraid," he admitted, the walls he had constructed around his emotions starting to erode. "I thought you'd see me differently, that you'd think I had changed, become someone unrecognizable." A flicker of hurt appeared in her eyes, and he quickly added, "Money was supposed to solve problems, but it only deepened my isolation. I can't enjoy it if it means losing you." His mother shook her head, her sorrow palpable. "We love you, Keith. We've always loved you, regardless of how much money you have. I wish you had trusted us enough to share." Her words sliced through him, revealing the raw fear he had hesitated to confront. What was he truly afraid of? A moment of clarity illuminated his internal struggle. It wasn't just the money, it was the fear of redefining his identity in their eyes. Slowly, he reached towards a canvas leaning against the wall, marred with vibrant swirls and raw emotion. "I've poured everything I've felt into my art. It reflects my journey, a quest for connection, for understanding. It's not just about this money, it's about the cost of success on my spirit, my relationships." He could see the tension in her shoulders ease as she followed his gesture. "Show me," she urged, a not-so-quiet demand layered with a fragile vulnerability. With each brushstroke he revealed, he felt a sense of liberation offsetting the weight of their earlier exchange. Each painting told stories of conflict, loss, joy, and devastation, the highs and lows that made up the fabric of his life. As she examined the art with a deepening appreciation, Keith felt a flicker of hope that perhaps she could understand. "This is beautiful, Keith," she whispered, tracing a delicate outline in the paint. "You've captured so much." "I tried to express what I couldn't say," he replied, his heart racing with renewed fervor. "But now it's time to say it. I need you to see me fully, not just as your son, but as a man who has fought to maintain his identity amidst the chaos of newfound wealth." The conversation flowed more freely now, a wave of honesty washing over them. For the first time, Keith shared moments of vulnerability, his insecurities, his struggles to find balance, the emptiness that initially accompanied his newfound riches. Yet, even as they laughed and cried, the gnawing fear of judgment lingered like an unwelcome guest on the periphery. Would his father accept this truth? Would he feel just as alienated when he learned of Keith's financial success? "Do you think Dad will understand?" Keith wondered aloud, feeling the tentative threads of connection between them but acutely aware of the potential for rifts to form. His mother's response was immediate, yet cautious. "Your father may need time, but you have to be honest with him too." The realization that the journey toward acceptance and understanding had only just begun added another layer of tension. Keith could feel the momentum shifting, but uncertainty tugged at him, reminding him that truth could invite both liberation and rejection. As they sat together, artifacts of their shared history unfurling a deeper dialogue, the air thickened with the complexity of the moment. He had taken one brave step forward, but another loomed ahead, the conversation with his father, a task that felt even more daunting. Keith looked into his mother's eyes, questioning if this revelation could indeed pave the way for healing and clarity. "I hope this leads us closer," he voiced, not just as a desire but as a testament to his growing determination. With the vulnerability of their connection uncovered, he sensed a shift within himself, a budding resilience that promised growth. Yet the fear nagged at him. What if this was merely the beginning of a longer struggle for acceptance? Tomorrow would bring another chance to confront his father. Keith took a deep breath, fortified by the dialogue with his mother, but acutely aware that the true test awaited just around the corner. Would he have the courage to face his father's potential judgments and redefine their relationship in the aftermath? A new day beckoned, a canvas stretching before him, not pristine and blank, but woven with complexities, emotions, and the haunting possibility of misunderstanding. The journey was far from over, and Keith began to realize that, even in truth, there remained fragments of uncertainty, potent moments that could lead to either emancipation or heartbreak. Keith woke the next morning with a heaviness in his chest. The golden light of dawn filtered through the blinds, yet it provided little comfort as he sat at the edge of his bed, grappling with the weight of the conversations ahead. The interconnected threads of his life's success, fear, love wove challenging patterns his mind struggled to decode. He shared his truth with his mother, and now the next step loomed before him, telling his father. Keith couldn't shake the anxiety that crawled under his skin like an insistent itch. What would his father think? Would he view the news with pride, or would it ignite the same dismissive judgment he had seen in his eyes during recent family gatherings? He pushed himself to stand, the decision etched onto his mind like the paint on his canvases. Today would not be about wrestling with fear. Rather, it would be an invitation to confront what lay buried. He needed clarity, not just for his father, but for himself. He had been an artist searching for meaning, and today he would paint his vulnerability with the broadest strokes possible, dressing quickly. He chose a denim jacket he remembered his father wearing during barbecue weekends, an emotional anchor of familiarity. He soaked in the memories echoed within the fibers, wanting to cultivate connection rather than division. As he made his way down the stairs, he practiced the words in his mind, but they felt jumbled. The sound of his mother bustling in the kitchen created a semblance of normality he desperately clung to. "Are you okay?" His mother's voice broke through his thoughts as he joined her. "Yeah, just thinking," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. The weight of his intentions clung heavily to him. "About your father?" she asked, her tone laced with understanding. It was clear she sensed the unease shadowing his movements. "Yeah," he admitted, stirring the coffee she handed him. The rich scent enveloped him, tethering his racing thoughts. "Remember, Keith, take it slow. Frame the conversation in a way he can understand. Context matters," she advised. Her insight resonated in him, urging a more methodical approach to what felt like emotional warfare. "Context. Right." He nodded, realizing he needed to contextualize his success not as a monetary windfall, but as a life transformation filled with intention, struggle, and, most importantly, his attempts to stay true to himself. With a plan simmering, he arrived at his parents' house a few hours later, the familiarity of the place igniting a sense of nostalgia. Each creak of the floorboards beneath his feet echoed memories as he walked toward the living room. He could hear his father's voice, boisterous, confident through the half-open door. "Dad?" Keith called, stepping inside. His father looked up from his chair, eyes narrowing slightly as though trying to gauge his son's emotional landscape. "Keith, where have you been?" The bluntness of the greeting hit like a jolt, but Keith steadied himself. His father always possessed a sharp shield against vulnerability, a trait Keith was now all too familiar with. "I need to talk to you," he began, consciously keeping his tone calm. The words could not be rushed, they required deliberation. "I've got something important to share." His father's brow furrowed slightly. "What's on your mind?" There it was, the spine of cool detachment. A challenge. Taking a deep breath, Keith prepared to display his palette of emotions. "I won the lottery. $50 million. The words tumbled out like freshly squeezed paint onto a canvas, raw and revelatory. A silence enveloped them. Keith watched the transformation on his father's face, the disbelief initially painted across it shifting to an inscrutable neutrality. "What do you mean, won the lottery?" His father's voice was steady, but edged with incredulity. It's exactly what it sounds like. Keith pushed forward, searching for the right colors of reassurance. It's a lot of money, but it hasn't changed who I am. If anything, it's made me more aware of what truly matters. I can't keep living in a shadow of uncertainty. The hesitation in his father lingered. A deep breath was taken, but no words followed. Keith felt the urgency inside him swell higher, mixed with fear and the longing for acceptance. The moment stretched between them like a taut string, one snap away from breaking. But he wouldn't back down, he wouldn't hide. He needed his father to see him, not just for his wealth, but for his authenticity. I want you to understand, this money, it's not a badge of honor. It's a challenge. And I need you to know that I'm still the same son you raised, struggling just as much as I ever did, perhaps more. Keith awaited the tide of his father's response. Would it pull him under, or would it embrace him? The question lingered in the air, heavy and expectant, and in that moment, he understood that every stroke of honesty could be the difference between connection and abyss. Yet as each heartbeat thundered in his ears, he sensed that while he was summoning every ounce of resilience, what would emerge from this confrontation remained uncertain, a potential fracture or the first threads of healing. And as his father opened his mouth to respond, Keith braced himself for whatever might come next, knowing the path to authenticity often rose through the flames of confrontation. Would this be the moment that defined their relationship anew, or would everything shatter? The silence in the room thickened, every heartbeat a drumroll leading into the unknown. Keith's mind raced, spiraling through potential responses as he searched his father's expression for any hint of emotion, something to indicate acceptance or rejection. His father, a man of few words and rigid expectations, was a landscape of challenges Keith long struggled to comprehend. Finally, his father's mouth closed again, pressed tight. The tension lingered, sharp enough to cut through the air, and for a fleeting moment, Keith wondered if he had miscalculated everything. Perhaps this moment of vulnerability had been too raw to show not only the wealth he had acquired, but the vulnerability that came with it. 50 million, his father finally said, breaking the silence, yet his tone carried the weight of disbelief. What are you going to do with it? The question hung there, weighted and loaded. It brought with it the responsibility of a life-altering decision, no longer just about the money, but the man he had become. Keith took another steadying breath, knowing he was on the precipice of defining who he was beneath his father's eyes. I want to use this money to create opportunities, he replied, choosing his words with care. I want to support artists, those struggling to find their voice. I want to build a community space, a haven where creativity can flourish. For me, it's about giving back. It's about investing in others, not just myself. For a moment, a flicker of something doubt, potential pride passed over his father's face, but it disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Keith pressed forward, driven by the need to further articulate his vision. Dad, I'm not the kid who chased money for its own sake. I'm an artist, and money, this remarkable stroke of luck, is just a tool to craft something greater. His father leaned back, the lines of confusion etched deeper on his forehead. But why do that? You could have everything you ever wanted. A nice house, a new car. You could finally have the life we dreamed for you. Keith felt himself burning inside at the last words. The life they dreamed for him, was that even his own? But that's not who I am. It's not what I want. I need to live authentically, to be true to myself more than ever. This money feels like a second chance, and I've learned that the journey is about connection, not about comfort. His father's eyes seemed to soften briefly, as if catching a glimpse of the man Keith had become, but just then, a veil of skepticism came rushing back. You think you can just change everything with your fantasies? It's not that simple, son. The disapproval in his father's voice sent a fresh wave of frustration through Keith. They stood on opposite shores of a deep, turbulent river, wrought with years of misunderstandings and antiquated expectations. No, it's not simple. But nothing worthwhile ever is. You've taught me to work hard, to fight for what I believe in. Why can't I apply that to my life just beyond chasing the usual? That last word, usual, echoed in the silence, resonating in contrasts. Because you have responsibilities, Keith, his father replied, the stubbornness that had defined him for so long reasserting itself. This isn't just about chasing dreams. It's about being practical, about doing what makes sense. What happens when this money runs out? It's not going to run out if I invest it wisely, Keith countered, trying to hone in on the concept of stability mixed with philanthropic purpose. I want to just blow it on things I don't need. I want something that lasts. The moment of truth swung precariously, and Keith could feel everything pivot on this exchange. Would his father embrace this new version of him, or would their relationship slip further into the dark abyss of misalignment? A grunted acknowledgement was all he received as his father shifted in his seat, and the weight of disappointment felt dense as it permeated the air. Keith grasped at the tether of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could help shift their dynamic a step towards understanding, a chance at acceptance. Let me show you, he urged, desperation creeping into his voice. Give me a chance, I want to involve you in this. I want us to navigate this together. There was a lengthy pause, and Keith's heart hammered, listening to the echoes of silence that filled that room. His father regarded him, a fortress still held close against any notion of vulnerability. Together? His father replied, disbelief laced with curiosity. How? Let us start by visiting some local artists and their communities, Keith responded eagerly, sensing a spark of potential as he stood taller. Let us inspire something new together. As Keith finished, the air felt almost electric, a thin thread of hope weaving between them. But would it be enough? He watched as his father's expression remained inscrutable, unwilling to fully embrace this new chapter of possibilities. In that moment, Keith realized he was in a dance, one that required patience, courage, and a willingness to face the unknown together. As he waited for his father to respond, an uneasy thought broke through. Could he sustain this journey? And what if, even after all this, the connection they sought still eluded him? The question loomed, monstrous and unyielding, awaiting an answer that felt too daunting to confront. Would today be the start of building bridges, or was he merely laying foundations for disappointment? In the weeks that followed, Keith Anderson embraced his new dual identity as both an artist and a man willing to confront his truths. The conversations with both his mother and father, pivotal yet unsettling, had set the canvas for transformation within his family dynamic. Each discussion served as brushstrokes on the larger picture of his life, gradually shifting perceptions and forging deeper connections. Keith dedicated himself to refining his art, pouring his feelings onto the canvas with wild abandon. The gallery showing became a pivotal platform to showcase both his creations and the man he had become. And as public interest burgeoned, he felt confidence swell within him. No longer was he just a secret millionaire whispering through the veil of anonymity. He was an artist with emotions that resonated and reflected both his struggles and triumphs. With each painted piece, he found himself learning that vulnerability often held the key to deeper connections. His work drew attention. Critics praised not just the aesthetic value, but the raw authenticity that echoed through every stroke. The gallery showing, an event he initially dreaded, morphed into a celebration of self-discovery. The community that had seen him as just a truck driver now basked in the shades of his once hidden life. The weekend of the exhibit, his heart raced as he stood amongst friends and family. Nervous anticipation electrified the air. When he finally stood before the crowd, he poured into them the very essence of what had propelled him through the tumultuous months. I have secrets, he began, voice steady but rich with emotion. I kept a fortune hidden and grappled with fears of acceptance and the price of success, he shared candidly. The eyes of those gathered widened, not with judgment, but with understanding. He detailed how each chaotic brushstroke mirrored the struggles he faced and how embracing vulnerability paved the way for authenticity not only in his art, but in his relationships. Feedback from his family, especially his parents, was overwhelmingly positive. His father, usually stoic, nodded in acknowledgement, realizing that acceptance could also manifest in gratitude for Keith's choices. Each painting symbolically became a bridge, a connector between his newfound wealth and the roots that firmly anchored him in honesty. As the night unfolded, Keith witnessed friends exchanging stories, laughter blending softly with the sounds of admiration echoing through the gallery spaces. Linda stood, beaming with pride, having witnessed her brother's transformation unfold in all its color and complexity. Their bond had deepened, built on honesty and a renewed commitment to family. Keith felt the weight of isolation dissolve, replaced by the warmth of connection that is formed through shared experiences. The highlight of the evening came when an esteemed artist he admired approached him. "Your pieces resonate on a level that's transcendent," she said with sincerity. "You have a unique story painted into every inch of your work. Keep pushing the envelope." Her praise struck a chord within him, a confirmation of identity that he had been seeking amidst doubt. Weeks later, the gallery showing led to partnerships opportunities to collaborate with local artists and engage communities through art. Keith birthed a project aimed at providing a platform for marginalized voices, understanding that his wealth could create spaces for others to express themselves. He realized, as he saw the impact of his efforts, that personal fulfillment stemmed from connection and service. The applause that he once craved morphed into a quiet satisfaction. Seeing fellow artists flourish, finding their voices and sharing their stories through the community programs he facilitated, brought him unparalleled joy. In moments of solitude, though, Keith did not shy away from reflecting. Trusting himself and navigating his wealth felt daunting. Yet, an unwavering truth anchored him: genuine connection would always form the heart of his being, a principle embedded deeply within. As he navigated his responsibilities with fidelity and transparency, Keith understood he had conquered his most profound fears. No longer was he trapped within the confines of expectation. He had sculpted his reality through intention and purpose. And so it was. The truck driver from Maplewood had become a celebrated artist and a beacon of hope for many. With solid confidence and recognized competence, he had bridged the gap between his past and future. The journey of transformative art became a testament to the power of vulnerability, reminding all who witnessed it that true fulfillment lay not in fleeting success, but in the bonds forged through authentic engagement. With newfound clarity on the horizon, Keith prepared for the next chapter, eagerly anticipating the artist he would continue to evolve into a role grounded in humility, artistry, and a steadfast commitment to his roots. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let everyone see this journey. Comment below your reactions and theories about Keith's transformation, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this profound conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to support the channel. Only true fans understand the importance of these actions.